7 o'clock, smack on the button. You know what that means. It's Topical starts right now. A very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman. This is It's Topical, our digital audience with us tonight, popping up on your screen. Good to have them. They will weigh in terms of some of the burning questions they have for our guests in a short while. SABC News reporting, EFF leader Julius Malema scoffing at suggestions that the departure of some senior party leaders signals the beginning of the end for the party. Now this follows, as you know, the resignation of the party's former national chairperson, Advocate Dali Mpofu, this week. He has joined a list of party members who recently left the Red Beret to join the uMkhoto Sizwe Party. Among them, as you know, Floyd, who's got a new position now in the MK Party. We'll tell you a bit about that in a short while. Advocate Sizwe Party, as well as Mzwanele Mani. Among them, Dali Mpofu also in that shot. But Malema has told SABC News that the departure of the leaders does not mean that the party is falling apart. He said that the EFF is the future and cannot be destabilized by opportunism. What do you think? We have the better minds of the program tonight to break it down. The aim of tonight's show is to better understand the political state of play, the umbrella question of the week. And we're asking you, what does the future hold for the EFF following a wave of prominent departures? It's a simple question, it's a complicated answer possibly. Let us know at SABC News_TV. Let's walk and talk, let's get you some context. And that's the whole point, as I said, of this program. It's not to tear down, it's to give you context. What does this mean in the greater scheme of things? What does the future hold for the EFF following these resignations? Let us know your thoughts at SABC News_TV. Perspective coming up. All right, let's tee up the discussion for you, what we know and why it matters. SABC political journalist uMkhoto joins me now. Thank you, sir, for your time. Always good to have your better mind. Now, with regards to some of the losses that the EFF has suffered, some of the prominent departures, high-profile departures, tell us what this means for the party.
Well, good evening, Blaine, and good evening to the viewers at home. Floyd, as you would know, that some people have been branding him as the brain trust of the EFF.
Right.
This is the man who conceptualized the idea of the EFF. He doesn't really claim being the originator of the EFF idea,
right.
But what he's saying that what he's claiming is that he's the one who conceptualized its founding manifesto. Even the reference of the names like Omisai and the CIC, that's what he has done. So someone who has started a party from nothing to be a formidable force at some point. The EFF was the main party in parliament, the number 3 in parliament. That on its own says a lot. Lost to the MK party, a party that is still on its infancy stage.
Right.
That on its own tells a lot about him joining the MK party. He was given the responsibility immediately as he comes in of that of the national organizer, to go to the branch, to go to the rank and file,
right.
Organize them. And now, weeks later, he's given the Secretary General's position. You're the engine of the organization if he becomes the Secretary General.
Right.
So again, that on its own says a lot. Floyd, he's got a political science master's degree.
Yes.
It really says that the EFF, the MK party, is salivating to have him in its ranks. And of course, if you look at other contenders, for instance, as you said, some of the entrants in the MK party, like Advocate Sizwe Mkhwebane. You see, politics, Blaine, sometimes it's all about numbers, what you bring on the table.
Correct.
You can talk about the intellectual capacity of an individual.
Right.
But what matters most is the numbers, because politicians and political parties contest elections. Sizwe Mkhwebane, we don't know what is she bringing on the table.
Yeah.
But we only know that he's an advocate. He will bring sort of the legal prowess that is amassed over the years.
Was any of these names a shock to political watchers out there?
Well, a shock for me was Floyd Chibambo, because he was very close to Julius Malema, even when they conceptualized the idea of forming the economic freedom fighters.
Right.
Busisiwe Mkhwebana, it was understandable. A bit shocking, because remember, at some point she was chewed by lions and allowed to fend for herself. And she was saved by the EFF. And when she moved from the EFF, it was a bit of a shock for me. But Mzwanele Manye, for instance, he was very close to a former president, Jacob Zuma. So, his departure to the MK party wasn't a surprise, really. But Dali Mpofu,
right.
if you think of the proximity of Dali Mpofu to the former president,
right.
at some point he became his lawyer. You remember playing that at some point a senior counsel, Moses Kakane,
right.
was representing former President Zuma. And throughout the years, Moses Kakane didn't get any job from government.
Right.
That's what he said. And Dali Mpofu risked his career to represent former President Zuma in his difficult times. And he has been in and out of courts with him. Right. Even with MK, when MK was taken to court, he was representing the MK and former president. And so his proximity says a lot.
Right, and he told Mzondile Mbeje that he basically, together with former President Jacob Zuma, conceptualized the MK party.
And in fact, he presided over the meeting that conceptualized that. And everyone was surprised, even Floyd Chibambo, when he attended that a meeting of different political parties who are now forming the progressive caucus, some of them. He was there presiding over that meeting.
Right. Talk to us about Parliament and the shake-up there.
Well, if you look, Fana Mokoena, yes, indeed, left the party. And he decided to focus on what he's good at, that's acting. And if you look at Sihle Lonze, this young man, he's the president of the EFF Student Command. He's bringing a lot of energy in Parliament, especially when it comes to advocating free education. And for the EFF in Parliament, I think for the EFF in Parliament, yes, I think he's a good sort of a welcome in Parliament. And Tebo Khomokwele, you recall Tebo Khomokwele at some point, I think she was a member of Parliament, and she resigned around 2020 when she was found that, in fact, she received around 80,000 rand from President Cyril Ramaphosa for her personal use, and the EFF was not happy about that, and she decided to fall on a sword, and she resigned. Now she's back. She was an MP, so a bit of political hack in the EFF.
Talk to us now. Mid-December, the EFF goes for their National People's Assembly. Some of the faces that you see here, who will be at this conference? Who will be there after the conference? What sort of positions? Who's the contenders here?
Well, except the CIC, Julius Malema, he will remain the president. And of course, Marshall Dlamini is very close to Julius Malema, even Julius Malema. When Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, when there were talks that Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is going to contest Marshall Dlamini, Julius Malema was not really happy about that, saying Dlamini is doing a sterling job. So Marshall Dlamini will remain the secretary beyond the 15th of December. And of course, if you look at Gadi, Gadi has been touted as Malema's deputy. And even if you look at the slate that Malema at some point released, Gadi was the deputy president.
Right.
But if you look at Veronica Mente is not really in good terms. At some point, we heard Julius Malema saying that only two of your favorites are remaining.
Yes.
One of them, some people are saying, it's either Veronica Mente, Ndlozi, and maybe Umpile would remain.
Right.
Popi Mailula.
So there's been a lot of speculation, especially with regards to Dr. Ndlozi. What do we know officially, though, from the party in terms of his continued participation in this party?
Well, for now, he remains a member of the party, the Central Command team. But this relationship was somewhat soured between him and Julius Malema. And if you look at some of the utterances, some people are saying that he's very close to Floyd Chibambo. Even today, when he was speaking to our politics editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, he mentioned, Floyd mentioned his good relationship between him. But he said that it's not his business, and it's not in the nature of the MK party to go out and campaign from other political parties. He said if they want to come and join them, they will join them voluntarily. And he said that the attack is that asibabizi bayasela. So if Ndlozi decides to leave the EFF and join the MK Party, he will go at his own will, he will go at his own time, but possibilities are he won't even feature in the top 6 of, the top 6 of the EFF, at least according to the wish list of Julius Malema.
And Chibambo was saying that they, as the MK Party, don't make a concerted effort to go out and recruit people. They're welcome to join as and when they wish. Yes,
that's what he said when we asked him about whether don't they see themselves as out to really derail other political parties who are seen to be the leftist parties and those parties who are strategic in terms of working together in this progressive caucus as they go forward. And he said that it's not their business, it's not in their nature to really recruit.
Appreciate your insight, sir. Thank you so much.
Could be.
That was SABC political journalist uMkhoto there. All right, we want to get your views as well. Let's go to our regular word on the street feature. We visited various locations across the country to gather some insight in terms of what the public makes of the future of the EFF. Here's what you had to say. Take a look.
Those who have jumped ship, for them it's for some of them it might just be a political strategy to stay alive and stay relevant. But for some, I believe they have seen the bigger picture of wherever they have joined is going the direction where they see South Africa. It has a plan for South Africa going forward. And some may not like it, some may not be fully supportive of it, but it's something way better than most parties have been able to put to the table.
The future doesn't look bright on the EFF side, because as you can see, most important members are leaving the party. We don't know the reason why are they leaving. We don't know. There must be a reason behind. They can't just leave like that. So there's something happening. We don't know. Are they leaving because they are not happy with Julius, or are they leaving because Zuma is promising something better than Malema?
The future is bright on the EFF, because if you can check the leadership that they're having, and then they also believe more on the youth. They're developing more, Then if they're losing those big guys there, but I still believe that the future is bright.
There's no party anymore. It's just a field. Everyone just go as they want. Don't worry about EFF. Next election, we won't have EFF anymore.
Leaving of the likes of Shivambu and all those prominent figures, for me, it doesn't make sense, because EFF is not run by individuals. It is a national opposition. This thing is all about, I think there's personal issues between Shivambu and Julius Malema, which they should just sit on privately, discuss their issues, bury it, and move on. The political party is a national issue. It shouldn't be personalized.
We will be fine. The fighters who are here we are here for policies and everything. So I don't think those who will go they were always going to go, because they do not understand why they joined the EFF. We joined the EFF for better policing, and then we believe in the EFF. And those who will go, they will just leave us in peace, and then we will continue with the revolution.
All right, that's the tweet that's causing a lot of speculation. What does the future hold for the EFF? Let's discuss with the better minds. It's very difficult to predict the future. Maybe we should aim for some educated guesses. And two people that are primed to do that is Ibrahim Fakir. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Sandile Swana, thank you, sir, for joining us. The better minds on the program offering us some insight. We also have our digital audience as well. Please, if you have any questions or comments, please raise your virtual hand. I'll try my very best to get you onto the program. Now, we wanted to invite the EFF, of course, on the program tonight. They didn't take up the offer, saying that the CIC addressed this question. There is no need for anyone to come and talk about hyperbole. They are occupied, we're told, with the National People's Assembly's preparation. So that is something that they can line up in the next coming weeks, we're told, to talk about their discussion document. So that's what the EFF had to say. Sandile Swana, given all that has happened over the past couple of weeks, over the past couple of months, what do you think this new chapter for the EFF looks like?
I think that the new chapter is being written in the SADC region, actually. When you read the discussion documents of the EFF is a post-colonial movement. In Botswana, you can see the removal of the liberation movement as we speak today. So the understanding of politics and the struggles that have been imposed by the so-called liberation movements across the SADC region is what the EFF, the struggle that it is in. And that struggle has not proved to be easy in Zimbabwe. It is not proving to be easy in Mozambique, even as we speak today.
Right.
So the developments that are happening are being understood and misunderstood at the same time. Others are busy, such as the MK Party, depending who you're talking to, trying to go and revive a dying ANC to bring it back to life. A dying liberation movement like ZANU-PF, Frelimo, and others. Others like the EFF are trying to define a new, by the younger generations, a new movement forward. So to me, that is how I see the new chapter.
Right.
I don't see the new chapter in terms of the people who are political celebrities and so on. I think there is a moment in history that we've entered into, the post-colonial, the post-1994 politics.
Right.
Including attending to the compromises of the 1994 settlement that still need to be corrected. Thank you.
10, 15 years ago, Ibrahim Fakir, the leaders of the EFF and the leaders of MK Party were all part of one party, the ANC. Still, the ANC exists without those leaders. So who's to say that the EFF can't survive these departures?
Of course, no one can say whether they'll survive or not survive or what. I mean, the reality is that it's a new political moment, completely. And I'm saying this not as someone who's a better educated mind, or as you call it, people who are in the know. We're simply going on the basis of the evidence that's before us. So 15 years ago, yes, you were right, they were the same party. Don't forget that between 15 years ago and now, things moved from being friends, comrades, to bitter enemies, then to kind of not just bitter enemies, but actual denigration. And then from denigration towards, as they call it in Afrikaans, a toenadering. And now you have people who are friends, or as the young people like to say, frenemies. People who are friends and enemies at the same time, and then those who are complete enemies. Now, we are missing a trick here. And that trick is, are we not asking the question, what does this mean? Forget the EFF for a moment, or MK, or the ANC, or anyone else. What does this mean for South African society? You know, we've long gone on about the question that there's a major crisis of trust in political parties. We've now gone beyond a crisis of trust. We're talking about a crisis of conscience and a crisis of belief. And why do I say this? You've got to ask yourself, these fellows who left the EFF, what do they actually believe in? What is their political stance on anything? Now, here's the thing about belief. As Advocate Mpofu, senior counsel, has said, the reason they say belief, because you can't penetrate someone's belief, you can't penetrate someone's mind, talk about belief, but we can question the motivation.
Right.
So the motivation, just 7 years ago, denigrate Zuma, denude Zuma, he sold the country, he doesn't deserve to be in high office, he's a delinquent, a constitutional delinquent, a political prostitute, corrupt, unethical. We can try every kind of other epithet. We've gone from that to Zuma's the best, Zuma's the greatest, Zuma is going to unite black people. Well, what did Mr. Zuma do when he was in office? The evidence is telling us between 2010 and 2012, levels of absolute poverty started going up after reducing in this country. Number one, who was affected by that? Black South Africans. The rate of unemployment between 2012 and 2015 started shooting up. This was not because of the global food, fuel and finance crisis of 2009. This was because of unethical state capture and corruption in South Africa. These are the very guys who believed that this was all the doing of Mr. Zuma. He was the prime mover and prime architect. Now he's no longer that. He's the prime architect, or he's going to be the prime architect of black liberation.
Right.
Tell us what you believe. Which one is true? What you say now or what you said then?
Why is the big question. What is the lure of those leaving the EFF and going to the MK party? Is it primarily Jacob Zuma? Because the policies, you're going to find it very difficult to dig and find a very fundamental difference between the EFF and MK party.
Yes, there is a simple explanation, straightforward explanation for this. If you look at the building blocks of MK, MK has been able to take chunks of the ANC. They can be able to go into a ward or a voting district and take a voting district just by capturing the leaders there. So these are the underground tactics of Jacob Zuma. And he's a master of this. And he knows the geographic terrain that he has operated in, even during the times of his underground, Mpumalanga, coming into KZN. That was his operating ground as an activist.
Right.
So he has captured people who were placed there during the struggle and who are placed there, who have been placed there by the ANC. And the ANC obviously does not look after its nest very well. The layer there, if you want to talk about the motivation, Zuma is a disgruntled ANC member. And he is able to identify other disgruntled ANC members and move them to MK. And he says he wants the king. If this is a chess game, he wants the king. Doesn't matter, anything else doesn't. But what is the king? Is to capture the ANC itself and get somehow, swallow all these small parties and end up with a 2/3 majority. And win, together with Dali Mpofu, if you want to put it that way. Win
Senior
the
counsel,
cases.
don't forget.
I will add that later. Win the court cases in parliament that they could not win in court. So there will be absolutions, there will be forgivenesses, there will be all kinds of changes, reversals of impeachments, all kinds of crazy stuff that you cannot imagine. When they say the sovereignty of parliament, that the majority decision in parliament must trump any other, including any reviews of the Constitutional Court, anything else. So that is basically the type of solution that they want. You make rules as you go along and you benefit whatever way that you can if you have control of that majority.
I'm going to go to my digital audience in a short while, but Ibrahim, if I can just throw in one more question. In terms of what's the talk in the political circles that you roll in, who's the best vessel or vehicle, EFF, MK, to hurt the ANC at the polls?
Well, okay, good question. But aren't we at a point where we need to start flipping the script? Who's the best vehicle for representing the aspirations of South Africans? That's our concern. I mean, who cares about what happens to these political parties? Let's just reset for a moment. South African politics in general and elections are not the preserve and should not be the preserve of political parties. The parties are mere instruments in the hands of people in society. So if you flip the question in that way, then you ask yourself, who's the best at playing a role in opposition? And one would have to say that on the basis of pure policy, longevity, history, that one would have to think that the EFF is better positioned to play this role of opposition, destructive as it might have been, because, you know, and they say so openly, our whole politics are about being unpredictable. You shouldn't be able to tell what our next move is. Our whole approach is to destabilize, destroy, and then occupy. So in that sense, they actually have a set of beliefs that they stand and fall on. like it or not. You may not have to like them, and I can quibble with a lot of the EFF's policies. Some of them are really pie in the sky, but some of them actually believe in it. There's a bunch who's left, and a couple of years ago, I almost got cancelled for saying that the EFF is itself factionalized. And you can see now the truth of that coming to fruition. But here's to return to, and in a way it answers your question. You asked Sandile, and Sandile was saying there isn't really a difference in their policies. I would argue that actually there is. The fundamental difference in their policies is that the EFF is actually a modernist political party which embraces fairly modern ideas around nature of the state, the character of the state, the role the state plays in the economy, in society, and so on. What does MK believe? That the state actually aggregates in traditional leaders. That the state must actually be done away with because traditional leaders will take their place. It is actually a fundamentally feudal idea. It is not a modern idea. It takes us back to the ideas of serfdom, of the leaders in who the aspirations of the people aggregate, not the people themselves. And that's the fundamental difference. And that's why I asked you in the first instance, these fellows who left, do they no longer believe that the people, the African person, the black person, is the actual articulator of their own aspiration? They don't have to do so through some messianic figure, which is what the MK party does believe.
All right. Look, it's testament to what we're seeing in the United States as well. Very little. People care more about their realities, their own pockets, their safety, and very little in terms of political dynamics within a party and what people say. You see it, the majority of people in America voted for Trump. Let me bring in our digital audience. Dr. ZM, your thoughts. Are we missing the bigger picture here?
Thank you so much. I would just re-echo what the best mind, like you put it, have said. I think my contribution is that when you join a party, you fundamentally believe in the ideals and ideology of that party. And then when you defect from the party, means you no longer believe in the ideals of that party, and then you join another party. So now, just to re-echo again, joining the EFF, they believed in those fundamentals, and then to then defect to the MK party then shows like a deviation. And it just shows how oftentimes individuals are more focused on proximity to power rather than actual loyalty to ideological beliefs that underpin a party. And that, for me, would be my contribution about the EFF's future going forward, because the EFF then needs to focus on the members keen into its ideals rather than focus in on just proximity to power. Because when we see the change in the recent election, the MK becoming the third largest party in terms of the percentage, that also shows how individuals are then much more liking to join the MK party compared to the EFF has dropped in percentage. So my contribution will just be on the ideological basis for joining the political party and your loyalty to those ideals rather than the party's proximity or likelihood to win an election. Point taken. Utando, agree, disagree?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, Blaine. So just to also add on to what Ibrahim had touched on in regards to the motivation of the party officials and also what Dr. ZM was about to get into, that is something that we should actually be focusing on, because when we look at all the post interviews of the different officials leaving EFF to go to MK, yes, the parties do have some differences, but the reasoning that they always bring up is freedom for Black South Africans, South Africans' dignity, things that EFF was already working on. So why would they leave EFF and go to MK if they're leaving with reasons that they both share? Unless they want to be financially and politically comfortable, that's what they're going for instead. EFF has now lost its popularity and they want to go to the winning team. And I really do believe that, unfortunately, the elections, yes, we saw that it was not in the favor of the EFF this year. And it's mainly either Malema's attitude towards his members and supporters or the advisors that he surrounds himself with. For example, the fact that they allowed him to speak so passionately about the open border policy days before the election, I think that was a great mistake, and that's what made them lose out on so many votes. Because at that time, South African voters were still a bit fickle. They were not too sure as to which direction they would go. But many of them do say that I would have voted for EFF, but then he mentioned that. He reminded me of that. EFF has been loud and proud in terms of being Pan-African. But the fact that he went ahead and spoke about that days before the election, there are people on his team that really should have calmed him down and given him a chance to speak about that after elections. Back to what I had said at that time, that there are discussions to be had before elections and discussions to be had after elections.
All right, let's leave it there, Utanda. We're going to get some analysis on that. We're going to take a quick break. Our question, umbrella question, is what does the future hold for the EFF following a wave of departures from that party? And what's the broader implication here in terms of the political landscape in South Africa? Quick break, more next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. We're asking you the question, the EFF, a wave of departures in that political party. What do you think that means for the future of the EFF? Let us know at SABC News_TV. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the program. Ibrahim Fakir, before we go to the digital audience, I've been hearing this word or the phrase progressive forces often of late. Given the current political state of play, what does that mean?
I'm entirely sure. I'm unsure, actually. I think you need to ask the people who bandy the thing about. There was a point at which it did mean something, Sandile, when the idea of being progressive meant that you felt that there was a degree of decency which is required in society. And that decency is not about the social idea of decency. The idea of decency is about effective redistribution in society, number one. Number two, that the weakest in society are effectively protected through not just the state, but through acts of solidarity in society itself. And so if you embrace those two central ideas, you were thought of as relatively progressive. Race was actually taken out of it, out of the idea of being progressive. But in South Africa, it had to be imported as it would be in the region because of this particular history that we experience of colonialism, of apartheid, and so on. So race featured in at some point, but this fundamental idea is that the weakest in society are protected, that there is a genuine aspect of redistribution, and that everyone lives a reasonably good life with some degree of livelihood. You will have personal choices. You will have people who fall on hard times. You will have people who are poor because of poor decisions that they might make. But our society is structured in a way that most people who live that kind of difficult, hard scrabble life are doing so now by accident of birth and by design of the system, not because of their own poor decisions that they made. So progressives want to change that and flip it on its head and say there are aspects in the state, aspects in society, which brings back the idea of fairness, of decency, of redistribution, of a fair shot and a fair opportunity. And then, you slowly start to take race out of this riddle. But what people mean by it now, I have absolutely no idea. Because if you think about what people who claim to be progressives are saying, they're actually into the politics of victimizing other people. They're in the politics of retribution, not redistribution. They are in the politics of vengeance, not of decency.
Sandil, you agree?
Yes, I think that there is a lot of confusion and opportunism, actually. I'll just use one idea. For instance, the idea that you can say that you are going to elevate the chiefs, and I've got nothing to a problem with the chiefs as such. This idea that the chiefs are now very prominent in this whole thing. The constitution and because when we were in the struggle, the issue of individual human rights was paramount. And the way that I know of protecting individual human rights, to protect the individual, so that no matter how big you are or how small you are, there's a paper that actually protects you, not a committee, not a parliament, because a mob can take a parliament and go for we say, no, we're going for Makwerekwe, or we're going for Xhosas, or we're going for that. No, you need to be protected by an unemotional piece of paper with proper institutions behind it. So there are ideas that are now coming in, and in fact, we must say even white supremacy is coming into this whole thing now, and all sorts of racism and other things that are coming in that when we were thinking about the new South Africa before 1994, we did not include some of the ideas that are now being considered to be progressive.
In what way is white supremacy coming to play?
You see, there are ideas. For instance, let's take a simple one. If black people are moving into the suburbs, for instance, I'm Xhosa speaking, I move into a suburb. Xhosa people were not property owners and residents in that suburb before. And there's a school in that suburb, which the board of that school is white Afrikaners, and the language policy of that school is actually Afrikaans. But the demographics of the area are changing. But the governance, the actual governing body of that school is not changing to reflect those of us who are newcomers into the area. Then the ones who are inside want to preserve that privilege. And AfriForum, Solidarity, and the DA are out there trying to say the outsiders must be determined whether they come inside by the ones who are inside and enjoying that. Right? And I have a problem with that, and I live in Krugersdorp. I've experienced, I'm in the middle of those things. Okay. And it's not just that. It's just that, as Ibrahim says, it's just that in South Africa that kicks in. Everywhere, whether you're going to Scotland or England, the ones who were privileged, they will tell you that there's old money. Even when you end up having money, they say, no, you have money, but you are new money. Or you are a commoner, I'm royalty, and this and the other thing. So that element right now of even people going out there and supporting problematic positions, such as supporting the continuation by the West, NATO, of the war in Europe to impose Western culture, which is a problem here, to impose Western culture on other peoples. The war in the Middle, the wars now, I mean, it's all kinds of chaos in the Middle East, to impose settler colonialism and apartheid. And there are people, South Africans, who support that position. So to me, that is how I mean when I say racism. The racists in South Africa are becoming bolder. They've been emboldened.
Right. Let's bring in our digital audience now to get their take. Tendai, let's hear from you first, and then Cornelia. Tendai, what do you make of the broader discussion?
Thank you. I think when I was reflecting on the recent exodus from high-level officials of the EFF moving to the MK, I think we need to look at it in two ways. We need also to interrogate the leadership of Julius Malema. I don't think that his utterances when Floyd left, and also his recent tweets, it also says a lot. It's a telling about his style of leadership. It also makes us question whether the EFF is democratic in itself. That's one aspect as well. And also, considering that the MK and the EFF, in terms of ideologically, they are more or less the same, and the exodus into a similar political party that has got similar ideology, it shows that the EFF is no longer a space where, in my view, where contrarians are welcome, where the threat to the throne is welcome. These are the perceptions that our people get. We are getting in the streets.
All right, Tendai, thank you very much indeed. Cornelia, let's hear from you, and then Hosi.
Thank you. I think my anxiety comes from just questioning the party's credibility, because if high-profile members like uMkhoto leaving the party, then what does it say about us as EFF's supporters? And we saw the loss of his supporters within the recent elections. So now in the next coming 5 years, how relevant and credible would they be? And such internal conflicts within political parties are so saddening, because it shows their lack of interest in people's interest, and it's more about their private interest. So the upcoming elective conference could be a way for them to reconsolidate their leadership and redefine their strategy, or this max exodus could possibly be a gradual fragmentation for the party.
Thank you, Cornetta. Hosi?
Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm audible.
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Wonderful. I think there's many things that we need to consider, and I'd like to agree with and expand on the point made by Tendai, where he said that one of the challenges that the EFF has is that we can see that there's a very, very limited democratic style of leadership from the current CIC, Mr. Julius Malema. And I think what we are seeing here, and I think we might very well see the same sort of style of leadership in the MK, but what we're seeing here is that there are a few members or a few leaders of the EFF that are sort of in pursuit of greener pastures. And it sort of brings to question what exactly does the future hold for the political landscape of South African politics?
Right.
Because 2024 was a very eventful year in which we saw basically the decline of the EFF and the MK.
Right.
And so there are many strategies that the EFF does need to sort of implement in order to sort of come back. So I think it's some of those things that we will have to question to see whether the EFF can come back from,
right,
if it is to continue to survive.
Hosi, thanks. Ibrahim, it reminds me, and I've written down this quote from Dali Mpofu in conversation with our Mzondile Mbeche a few days ago, and he says, the road to total liberation cannot be found unless you have a total black and progressive unity. From what has been said, how does that feed into the narrative?
Well, I mean, you've got to take what is being said on its own terms. And on its own terms, it is entirely senseless. And it's entirely senseless because you've got to go back into history. So, historically, see, as the ANC went into its Morogoro conference, a formulation which was advanced by the South African Communist Party at the time was one which said that there are no historical or necessary antagonisms amongst black South Africans in general. And in part, in totality, that was true. That doesn't mean that there wasn't class differentiation amongst black South Africans. We know that there were. Apartheid, for one, structured black South African society in the Biko term of black. It kind of segregated and segmented it amongst blacks, Africans, Indians and coloreds, one who was slightly better off than the other. But amongst Africans themselves, there was a petty bourgeoisie. Beyond the petty bourgeoisie, there were those professionals and semi-professionals, etc. That's excluding those people who are in the Bantustans, which is an entirely whole different demographic and dynamic. When South Africa is united in 1994 and we are reconstituted as a country, those antagonisms, though they existed, were latent, residual, but were not at the fore. Now they are at the fore. There are necessary antagonisms amongst black South Africans in general. There are antagonisms amongst African South Africans, not just as Sandile says, Xhosa, and maybe there are antagonisms amongst Xhosas and other non-Nguni people. For example, the idea that there are ethnic tensions and something that we've shied away from a long time is a reality. There's a necessary antagonism. There's another necessary antagonism. The interest, my interests as a middle class, and I can't deny that I am middle class, are not the same as a shack dweller. Nor are the same of a person who grew up in the same apartheid era that I grew up in, but I had the advantage of education, of traveling, of cosmopolitan exposure and so on. They did not. We have an antagonism. Our interests are fundamentally different. Sandile Tukey does not share the same social, demographic, and class profile that he may have shared with people he started university with, because their paths differed, some did better than others, and so on. So this idea of total black liberation can only come about if there's total black unity is untrue, because there are necessary antagonisms amongst them. We've moved on from 1969. This is a hoax to proffer out there that you want to unite, okay, in this country right now, who do you want to unite against? Let's interrogate that premise.
Sandile?
Yes, I forgot to mention something earlier on, even for our digital commentators. I think there's a 257-page policy discussion document of the EFF that a lot of us need to read more than paying attention to these events that are happening, because there's information that can help them to understand what's going to happen in coming elections and so on in those documents and what happened in the past. Now, coming to this issue, let's say we were talking concrete terms about black unity. And I'll use one concrete example. In 2004, the year 2004, the ANC, let's say the ANC would have been a symbol of some sort of black unity. They got 69.69 votes, 70% of the vote. Now, you can't get 70% of the votes without a lot of black votes in South Africa because of the percentage of the population. So statistically, people were converging towards a relatively successful ANC in government, relatively successful. Then Dali Mpofu and Zuma and those guys in MK today, they were in the ANC, and the ANC had 70%. What did we get? We got Polokwane after that. And it has been a downward trend. So when taken as a whole, the ANC has maintained a majority until this last election in 2024. From 70%, they still maintained a majority until 2024. What did we get out of that black unity? So there are problems. And if we're to use Ibrahim's terms, these people who got the 70% vote and maybe up to 57, whatever number you want to use by 2024, were not progressive, because these things he was talking about, that the weakest were being advanced and being protected and so on and so forth. That has not happened. Poverty has escalated, etc., etc. So to me, there is a problem, which is why the concept of a post-1994, a post-colonial movement needs to start, because the whole thing needs to be scrapped.
Ibrahim, I've got a minute or so. I'm going to give you the final word in terms of, at this political junction, what sort of hard questions should Julius Malema be asking himself?
Well, there's many. The one is got to interrogate not just his own leadership, but the way in which he took the organization in its directions. For example, he was also one of the people who were a symbol of exactly what I described in the opening segment. What did you believe? That Zuma was actually a constitutional delinquent? If so, why did you go to FT with him? Why did you think that there ought to be some kind of accommodation between you and the MK party? But not only that, I mean, you admitted people into the party and gave them leadership positions in parliament, people who you said were the worst public protector ever. She was a spy, she should never have been public protector in the first place. Carl Niehaus killed his mother to access her. You know, you made those statements, yet you elevated these people here. What do you actually believe? Now, Blaine, the last word is this. I don't think we must get too hung up about this. South Africa is in a new phase of history. The manufactured consensus that kept people together is now broken down, as it necessarily must so. People must be able to articulate their interests. But hey, let's actually have the courage of our convictions and have a conscience and say what we actually believe in.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Sandile Ibrahim. To our digital audience as well, no doubt value added. We'll watch the space and see how things progress. Thank you very much indeed. All right, before we go, here's my take. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Could that be true for the EFF? The Economic Freedom Fighters describes itself as a radical and militant economic emancipation movement formed about 11 years ago with the aim of bringing together revolutionary, militant activists, community-based organizations, as well as lobby groups under the umbrella of the political party pursuing the struggle of economic emancipation. That's on their website. You can go and read it. Julius Malema maintains the EFF is the future. This is what he had to say to our Sophie Mokoena on Friday in Botswana.
It can't fall apart because you can't destroy that which you have not built. It is our own child, it's our own baby, and we will decide what we do with it. The EFF is the future, and it cannot be destabilized by opportunism.
Look, bottom line, political parties exist because you, the voter, allow their existence. And the parties exist to win. Why? Because they want to make a difference. Now, whether the difference is good or bad is really up to them. But we, as voters, allow them to either prove us right or wrong. It boils down to voters' choice. Voters are often interested in their own reality, their own well-being, their own pockets, seemingly more so than political dynamics within a party or what someone says. They're more concerned with what someone or a collective does for them and their families. Actions tend to speak louder than words. You, the voter, hold a lot of power. Use it wisely. And that's my take. Democracy 30 up next with Oliver Dixon. Until next week, my brothers and sisters. Take care. Bye-bye.